Hey everybody, welcome to Murder Moose. I'm Rod, and Josh is still out of commission, so I brought my good dude Jerry in here to come talk about horror with me, and we're going to be talking about Malignant tonight. But Jerry, how the fuck are you, my friend?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for asking me to be on this. I am so stoked to talk about this movie.
Yeah, dude, I am too. It's gonna be super interesting. Dude, I found you through Andy and Brian doing the Dead in Santa Carla, and I was so stoked because you're another guy that's your talents are they're very like in my wheelhouse of like interests. Like you're real into music. You score movies. You score all this stuff. I saw you were just turning in a score for an audiobook, which is fucking dope.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you write articles about horror, which is fucking dope. So like right up my alley when it comes to interests. So I know you've been a horror person for your whole life. You just wrote, okay, we could talk about this is already ADHD because I'm me. You just had an article in a magazine that had a bunch of contributors about Halloween, right? So Halloween's one of your big franchises, right?
Yeah, dude, the Halloween series is without a doubt, and I don't mean this with in like any exaggeration. It's like the love of my life, right beneath like my kids and my wife. Like it,
yeah.
I've said this on other podcasts, but I came from a upbringing and a childhood that was really, really abusive. I was a survivor of sexual abuse as a kid, and my stepdad at the time broke my mom's back, and she was in the hospital the whole summer that I stayed with her. So to keep me away from this dude, she would give me enough money to stay in the theater next door from open till close. Yeah. And this was like, early 80s, mid 80s. So pre-Columbine. Yeah. So they didn't really card kids if you had a note.
Yep.
So I would go in there as a 7-year-old and watch whatever the fucking movies are playing. And, it was such like a very violently abusive situation. And I remember one day I just walked into the lobby, 7 years old. I had no business being in that theater by myself. I walked in and I saw this poster and I was just like, wow, what is that? That is the coolest looking fucking poster ever. And I went in and it was Halloween 4. And that movie to this day, like the first Halloween's my favorite movie of all time, but Halloween 4 is the most important movie in my life because that was a movie that I saw, and it's that movie's basically about this kid who's trying to escape this predator that's coming after her. So like I found so much in that became my lifelong obsession, and it's like I pitch so many articles to so many magazines, and it seems like I have to write at least one Halloween related article at least once every 2 months. So I love that shit.
It's so funny because like I have that my childhood wasn't as traumatic, right? Look, that stuff, but it's like I feel like so many of us who become and grow into adults that love horror, a lot of times, and not all the time, it's so rooted early on. Like it's so rooted on. I talk about how I remember at some point being in my grandmother's house up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and watching some kind of fucked up vampire movie. I don't know what the fuck it was. Like I was so little, I don't remember what the fucking movie was. And it like being one of those memories like from so early on. And I think, man, you ever hear about like LGBTQT people talk about things like even like Bride of Chucky and like and Seed of Chucky, those stuff that like it's all so important to people because it's that relatability thing, right? Like we just had, I haven't seen it yet, but Shang-Chi came out and I saw people like of Asian descent going, holy fuck, because representation matters, right? But it's all that stuff where it's like that shit, when you can connect with a movie like that, and especially if you're dealing with shit, like if that's an escape, man, that's like you get to go to and like let your brain click off for a couple of minutes
No, totally. My daughter had a situation a couple of years ago where she went through kind of similar abuse that I had as a kid, and as a parent, you never want to be in a police station hearing these awful things, and she had a really difficult time talking about it whatsoever. And for some reason, like one day she was like, Dad, is there any way that I could watch It Chapter 2? And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, of course. I sat and watched it. I watched it with her, and there's that scene at the end where they're taking, like, all the power that Pennywise took from them, and they're basically cutting him down to size. And I was watching that movie, and I saw my daughter just lose it. And she was screaming the name of her fucking abuser at that movie. And that movie helped her more than any fucking therapist did. So, like, I will forever champion horror. Not because I love it, not because it's the fucking coolest, because it is, but because, you know, I've never learned life lessons from watching the fucking Notebook. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
There's there's so many deep things that you could find in horror films. You know, like I didn't learn that feeling emotions was okay for like men until I watched Starman. You know what I mean? Like movies are able to like reach into you and like really like make you question how you feel about things. And I think genre films are the best.
Yeah, well, the thing with horror, which is like, it's funny because it's we talk about it in the show a lot, but it's that genre that doesn't have expectations, right? People are like, oh, it's just this little in the corner shit, but it's so much like also a strength because you can do shit like that and people don't have expectations, right? Like mainstream media type stuff, right? And you could get rid of shit and you could do shit and go into places that aren't going to fly in regular cinema, right? And that can be such a thing, man. Like you talk about things like Last House on the Left or things like that go and touch the rape issues and like that kind of abuse and trauma. And that stuff is so like, it can like be like, oh, this is just trash exploitation, but it's not. Like that's not saying that there isn't that kind of stuff, but you know, it's funny. Like I have a similar story with a movie that isn't horror, but like, so my wife and I have struggled for a long time to have kids, and we went and saw Arrival. Have you seen Arrival?
Yeah.
And the ending of that movie, where you kind of relate to what happened and the loop and everything that happened. My wife and I sat there and broke down crying in the middle of the theater because of the child aspect of that. And it's like, it's that like escape, but it's also that I get this and it talks to me directly and it means something to me as a person. And horror, like doing that is just, it's one of the strengths, and I think it's a thing that doesn't get talked about outside of the horror community, right? It feels like very like we're all like the goth kids talking about it in our dark corners,
listening to Joy Division.
No, life is only.
It's interesting because like on the special features, like the making of Aliens on the Alien box set, like Bill Paxton had this really cool thing that I always remember him saying, and it's paraphrasing because I'll probably fuck it up. But he says that kind of like Hollywood always sticks its nose up at horror films when horror films are what built Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like without the Universal monsters, there would be no Universal period.
Yeah, you think about the movies from the 30s and it's all horror movies, Frankenstein and Dracula and all that stuff. And then you go, it's funny because like Mary Elizabeth Weinstein, her name always fucking confuses shit at me, but she was just saying something, got quoted saying something about how much she loves horror because people were giving like some of her horror movies like shit. Like, I mean, she was in the Thing prequel, right? Or sequel, prequel, reboot. And you go, well, you know, what she went in for and what that movie became were two completely different things. And it's, again, I hate, and it's something to talk about on this show a lot, but when people, they hire directors and they come in and they go, do this, and then they come in over on top and they fuck things up, they edit things, they force changes, they do all these things, and you go, well, why are you hiring people to do things? And then like
they'll choose like very like auteur driven filmmakers, and then they'll like basically not let them be that way. Like I forget the filmmaker's name. I love his foreign movies, but the director that did the RoboCop remake, what he set out to do was second guessed every step of the way to where that dude quit Hollywood. He was like, nah, dude, I'm going back to my country. Fuck this shit. Yeah. I mean, Rennie Harlan lives on another island at this point. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it sucks.
And because you could see why, because that remake is so bland. It's so like paint by the colors kind of thing. And it is here. Where is it? I'm pulling it up. The remake was done by Jose Padilla. Well, dude, you look at it. You look at Chinese directors. You look at Japanese directors that come over here and do stuff. Like, you look at the guy who did all the those Hong Kong action movie. What the fuck is his name? I'm having brain farts. I can't think of anyone tonight. John Woo, yeah. And he did Face Off, which is a bonkers movie, and he did Mission Impossible 2, but like he kept like getting fucked with Hollywood. He said fuck this, and he went back to China. Like, and does, like, you know, it's you have all these movies, and you like. Well, that's another thing about horror, right? Horror is usually so low stakes that doesn't happen, right? Like, we don't know. I don't think we know for sure the budget of this new Halloween movie, but the last one was $10 million. And you go, so in the world that we live in right now, Halloween is coming out and streaming the same day on what do you call it?
Peacock, yeah.
Peacock, yeah. And they don't care because they only have to make like $30 million to get their money back. And compared to Venom that's coming out like a couple weeks before that now, and it's going to take 100 million times 3 or whatever. It's
just to break even,
yeah, just to break even. You go, well, it's that world, and then you get in these situations where you have people suing Marvel and Disney because of Black Widow and because they didn't make as much money as they were supposed to, and that's all this shit. It's like,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. You're good, man.
No, I was just gonna say what's interesting, and this actually has to do with this episode, is Blumhouse was made on those safe bets. Like the first few films that Blumhouse did, they had this very genius model that Jason Blum came up with. You know what? I'm going to give this filmmaker, this established filmmaker, a very small budget and say, do whatever the fuck you want. He gives James Wan $1.5 million, which is so small by today's standards. Go make this movie, The Further, that became Insidious, for $1.5 million. It pulls in over $90 million. Or he gives Rob Zombie like $1 million or $2 million to make Lords of Salem. And it's I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's his fucking best movie. Dude, that movie is perfect to me. Yeah. And like there was no gamble because it cost so little that even though it bombed and nobody liked it, you know, who gives a shit? Yeah. Dude, that movie, and I think we were talking on Twitter a little bit about this, like that movie, if you watch Halloween 2 before that movie, you can see what he was doing with Halloween 2. And I'm sorry, like, I didn't watch Halloween 2 for like a decade after it came out in theaters. Halloween 2 is a fucking dope movie. It's just the whole Michael Myers thing is like, people are like, oh, this is not. Well, you know what fucking goddamn the Weinstein brothers did to Zombie, man. You hear what they fucked with him. And I'm sorry, Zombie doesn't do fucking like the regular horror movies. He does zombie horror movies. And it's like, I went back and I like one of the shows on the network was doing a Halloween retrospect for the last couple months, and I went and talked about the 2 zombie movies. I actually find the first one way more boring than H2 now because it's so like the beginning is so bad, and the ending is pretty good, but it's the condensed original. Yeah. More brutal. See, I hated those movies when they first came out. Yeah, and to be honest, I'm still not a fan of his first one whatsoever. Yeah, but Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 has grown on me so much in the last year or two that I'm finally to the point where I could disconnect the name Halloween from that movie. If it was called anything else, that movie would be a fucking classic to so many people. That movie had, and I just showed my kids just the beginning of that movie. Because I mean, my kids are fairly young, so I'm not gonna show you know, like maybe Rob Zombie movies not yet, but that hospital sequence is fucking brutal. Amazing.
Yeah, it's really really good.
And that movie, like what I like about that movie that I've only like recently in the last year or two really understood is that everything that people hated about the first movie, it seemed like Rob Zombie was like, oh, you didn't like this? Well, here's that in spades. Like, and there's even jabs about critics in Halloween 2. Like, that Halloween 2 is 100% Rob Zombie saying, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. Fuck the Halloween series. This is my movie. Yeah. And I think it works on like that.
And you know what? I found out this because my buddy Sean, who was like, he was like, you have to watch Lord of Salem, and it was one of those movies that wasn't like streaming for a while in any place particular, and I ended up finally watching it. And I'm like, holy shit, this movie's fucking cool as shit, and it's zombie getting to be zombie, which is what is so impressive about that movie. And that there's a scene in that movie where she's walking past her kitchen, and there's just the fucking demon sitting in the corner. That is just like
terrifying, like, man.
It's burned into my memory because of it being such a weird scene. And like, it has some of the stuff where Zombie still, like, to this day hasn't been like great at writing characters.
Oh, but no, he's bad.
But it's that vision he has, and that like the eye he has from, like, you know, directing music videos and doing all the stuff he's done over the years. And you go watch H2 again after watching Lord of Salem, and you go, oh fuck, this like, all that stuff is like, you see it, like, and there are problems with H2, right? Like Malcolm McDowell's character is like, as Loomis is, I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing with that, but like, there's so much to like in that movie, and the overhead, like, he was doing these overhead like drone shots in the movie that are beautiful, like. Him Michael walking through those fields as like the homeless hobo.
Yeah, and he sees that billboard. The way it's shot, it's great. That and like one thing about Lords of Salem specifically is like a lot of the complaints about Zombie not knowing how to write characters. Like, I agree with those, but I think that movie is where he kind of locked into his really like really strong parts of what he does right. Because there's one scene in that movie that blew me the fuck away in the theater, and it wasn't anything visual. It's a very soft, quiet moment where Jeff Daniel Phillips' character is on the kind of pier, and he calls Heidi to check on her. And out of nowhere, in the middle of this fucking bonkers movie, there's one of the like sweetest, most endearing moments ever. And I was like, wait, what? What? Like, this is a Rob Zombie movie? And there's even a lot of that. And I know 3 from Hell gets a lot of shit, but I mean, I fucking love that movie. But there are a lot of like really quiet, introspective moments in 3 from Hell with these awful characters. Like, for a few seconds, you kind of sympathize with them. I think he's getting better.
Yeah. I think one of the things he does that I really enjoy as a filmmaker, he goes into that, when he does black and white, it's impressive, man. Like, and it's like, have you ever seen the Mist like version that's all black and white?
Oh, dude, I prefer that. It is so great. Yeah,
it's just one of those things where you do black and white. It's like The Lighthouse. One of the reasons The Lighthouse is so special, right? And you do it, and it just has that special feeling, right? And there are like, it harkens back, like, there are a lot of like older Hollywood movies. We talked about the Universal monster stuff. Like, I think The Mummy is boring. I know a lot of people, like, the original from the 1930s is kind of a boring movie, and I know it's just me and my modern ADHD with
no, dude. Stuff. I'm so glad you said that, because I've never liked that fucking movie.
yeah. So my wife is a Mummy fanatic, like the Brendan Fraser one. So I watched it with her like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm like, this movie is kind of boring. It's different expectations for different times, right? That has a lot to do with it, but you go, oh, okay, it's not much is happening for most of this movie. And you know, it's funny because I was like going back to the older versions. So we talk about Malignant here. That's one of the things I really like about Malignant, like James Wan doing this, like these hits of the old Hollywood. Like, a lot of this movie of Malignant feels like it's shot on it feels like it's intentionally made to feel like it's shot on a soundstage, right? Like,
no, totally. And like I've read people, and it's such a divisive movie already. Yeah, I've read people just tear it apart for these amateurish things, and how could James Wan do this when he's a master of this? And they don't fucking get that the dude did it intentionally. Like, he almost wanted you to hate the first 15-20 minutes. Because when it first started, I didn't say anything to like my wife or my kids because we watched it together. But inside I was like, oh no. Like, I was kind of scared that I was going to hate this movie. But then once I realized what it was going for, it completely clicked. The first 15, 20 minutes, it's overly dramatic. The dialogue's bad on purpose. Like, it feels kind of like a Lifetime movie. And that's how he ropes you in. He's like, oh, you think this is going to be that kind of movie? And that's what makes this movie so great to me. You think you know what movie this is, and it fucking pulls the rug so many damn times.
Yeah. Like, well, you think about it, man. Like, how many directors change genres and can just fucking kick ass at it like James Wan can? Like, he did a Fast and Furious movie, fucking killed it. Yeah. He did fucking Aquaman. He made Aquaman a badass. Like, that movie is dope. And it is like I think like pretty universally is like viewed as the best of those DC universe movies, like of the Snyderverse kind of movies, right? Like, he took all this stuff and you go, well, how do you make an Aquaman movie? And he did it, and he fucking killed it. I mean, he's one of those guys, he's almost like, he reminds me a lot like Tarantino, right? Because he's got the same kind of career projection kind of bit, like just more on horror instead of like drama. Like, he started off with fucking Saw. Saw is still one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
That's great, yeah.
And is one of the most well-constructed horror movies like ever. Like, I enjoyed most of the Saw movies, but the only memorable one is the first one. And I always go back to with the original Saw and what James Wan and Lee did. That I watched that movie with two of my roommates in college who weren't horror people, and they were like complaining about the movie. And then the ending happened where Jigsaw gets up, and they're like, I fucking love this, and oh my god, and it's that kind of stuff where it's like you have that kind of effect on people with an ending, and you go, holy shit, this person knows how to make a film.
That and like what was so great about that movie for me is that like when that twist happened at the end of the first Saw movie, the thought that went through my head was like, this movie is like Alfred Hitchcock if he grew up on Evil Dead. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like masterful. And like the fact that like James and Lee kind of continued to help kind of develop and produce the next couple of ones after that, I think the first three Saw movies work so well together as far as like a good, concise story. After that, it kind of just, let's see how Chester Bennington's back's going to get torn off. You know what I mean? Like,
It's funny, man. I know a dude from podcasting and like Hearthstone and stuff in the community, and like we ended up being good friends, and he was like living in Colorado for a while. He's from Kansas City originally and went to college with the guy who directed Saw 2. So that wasn't a fucking script that anybody wanted. And it was another one. It was kind of like the Hellraiser things where they took the script and they made it a Saw movie. Yeah. But they did a really good job with it. And that movie's still like, I might have the cringiest thing of the whole series for me to watch, like the
needle pit,
and it's like, ugh, but man, they did a good job with that, and there's other things I like. I don't hate any of those movies. I think some of them aren't as good, but like I appreciated. What was it? The Jigsaw more than like I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, me too.
I thought Jigsaw was pretty entertaining. I can't talk, but so it's funny because man, my connection with it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do independent and foreign horror stuff, because some of my favorite stuff is real. Like in the theater, the couple scariest theater experiences I've ever had with horror movies were Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity. And both those movies are done on such low budgets. Yeah. But just let your fucking brain destroy you. And it's kind of like what like James Wan has taken those lessons from like the lower Saw and just kept making movies that had those same qualities just with more and more budget and never, going nuts with it, right?
I love how one thing that when James Wan's going to do a horror film, one thing that is going to be really prevalent is tension. And I love that. Like, he makes you uncomfortable to the point where you're like, shit, what's going to happen? Yeah. And then it doesn't happen, and you're chill as fuck. And then it happens, And then, you go home crying, basically. And another gripe, and I kind of jump around too. Like another gripe that really is it's been on my mind since I've read it is people ask well, how did a major studio let James Wan make this bonkers movie? And people's response has been well, his last movie made $1 billion. Yeah, I agree to a point, but this is also the dude that had a fucking octopus playing drums in Aquaman. He's James Wan's always made James Wan movies, no matter what genre it is.
Yeah. Well, dude, and you and I both rewatched this movie. This movie makes the click at the end with the reveal of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It go back and when you know what's happening, you still go, oh, this everything's not 100% clear, but you're pretty clear on everything that's happening in it, and it makes way more sense and it clicks. And I think if people who are like, oh my god, Bob, they go in and they know what's happening throughout this movie, the flow from the intro to everything else, you're not going what the fuck as much because you understand where this movie is going. And I think there's so many people who I always think I went years ago and I don't, one of the reasons I haven't gone to the movie theater by us since they opened up again, because my wife and I were Alamo Drafthouse nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the last non-Alamo Drafthouse movie I went to was It Comes at Night.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Which is just a paranoia tension movie. But we went in at 4:00 on a Friday, and some drunk dude was screaming at the screen during all the trailers. And finally the movie started, and he started again, and I was like, "Shut the fuck up!" And then that movie goes, and he goes, I hear the guy go, "That guy told me to shut the fuck up for that," because there wasn't a monster movie, because they kind of had sold it as, obviously, but it was a very just a character drama, thriller kind of movie, and it was and I'm like, nope, not going back to theaters, and the Alamo Bias hasn't opened up again, and I'm like,
see, I'm the same way, because the closest draft house to me is about 2.5 hours away.
Damn.
And
yeah.
I have the Regal membership thing where, however movies you want. So my wife and I used to take advantage of that a lot before the pandemic, but I seriously can't remember more than 5 movies that I've enjoyed in the theater in the last 2 or 3 years. I saw Hereditary twice. Because I guess I needed more, depression, and and both times people were laughing the whole movie. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I didn't remember half of the movie when I watched it the second time because people were on their phones the whole time. My worst experience in the theater, I went to see Lady in the Water opening night. Which, I mean, that is the worst part of the story. No, but every 5 seconds, Taking Back Sundays, Make Damn Sure would play out of this teenager's phone. So every 5 seconds you would just hear, I just want to break you. And then after a while, it's can you please shut your phone? And this little girl turns around and goes, "It's my mom." And I'm I don't give a fuck. But if it's not a draft house, or it's not a theater that actually takes that stuff seriously, all these people complaining online about how sacred cinema is, that's been broken for me for a while. I prefer the theater, but I haven't enjoyed it whatsoever. So if I can have a decent system and a screen setup in my house, and I can put on mood lighting and enjoy a movie, and the worst I have to do is tell my kid to go to fucking bed because he won't shut up, that's a score for me.
Yeah, it's that's we're sitting here talking about it, but all the people don't want to get, and this is going off, but people don't want to get vaccinated. It's the same kind of people going to theaters because the only person that they care about is themselves. They don't care about the people around them. They don't care, it's only about them. And it's the same kind of people, right? It's oh, what does it do to me? This is my movie experience, and it's I don't know if did you ever hear those calls in this? Or I loved Alamo, where that chick called and was complaining about them kicking her out for being on her phone, and they just made it into a PSA for Alamo, where they're "You're on your phone, I'm gonna kick you the fuck out." And they even did it with Darth Vader, and it was fucking hysterical.
Didn't they ban Madonna or someone from draft house theaters for being on her phone?
Probably.
It was a big bald brass move. I think they banned Madonna from draft house theaters.
who could Madonna, the woman who solely managed to ruin Guy Ritchie's career for a while is
Right.
I mean, you look at Snatch and Lock, Stock, and then everything he did with Madonna, and you go, oh,
Are you saying Swept Away isn't a classic? No, I'm just kidding.
I think I am saying that.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's, man, like I haven't seen, my wife is I really enjoy the Marvel movies. I'm not like, oh my God, I like whatever, but my wife and I love them, and she's a huge fanatic. And we haven't seen 2 Marvel movies in theater, I guess 3 considering Black Widow, and it was like Thor Dark World, which we didn't miss much seeing that one, not seeing that one, and then like Shang-Chi and Black Widow, and it's like, because you can't go to the theater because you don't want to deal with it, and like, especially now in the fucking, dude, we were talking about wrestling a little bit beforehand. I've watched enough wrestling shows like since like COVID happened, where people are supposed to be in masks, and they're like chin diapers and shit like that. You know what I mean? And you're like, God damn it. Like, you can't,
like people were pissed. People were super pissed about like the virtual audience, and I understand because it just felt awkward as fuck. But at the same time, like if I see like a crowd full of like digital faces and everyone's safe, and I kind of prefer that to everyone dying.
Yeah. Well, that's why the way AEW did it, I was so happy with, because they were like, okay, we're gonna like have our wrestlers and people that we know what they're doing, and like test them and do all this shit, and like, yeah, it was, man, you can't trust people. Is I think the lesson that we've learned for sure over the last couple of years. So we'll dive into this a little more. I have to say though, man, like what kind of horror have you been watching lately? Is there anything else like besides Malignant that's like caught your attention that you've been enjoying lately? Like newer stuff. I mean, just or you've seen for the first time recently or something like that.
I thought that I would enjoy Nia DaCosta's Candyman. I thought I would enjoy it because I love the original. I didn't expect to be like moved as much as I was. Like that movie, and specifically the ending, and I won't spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen it. But I
haven't seen it yet.
Okay, then I won't spoil it for you. But there's the whole second half, maybe the last quarter of that movie, just breaks your fucking heart and then lifts you up at the end to where you're just like, I'm usually a quiet person. Like, I'm kind of uptight in theaters. Like, if you talk around me, I probably won't invite you to the movies with me again.
Yeah.
But, like, my kids, I even took my kids to see it, and my wife, and we were watching it, and they were super silent. And at the end of the movie, and for some weird reason, we were the only ones in the auditorium. And by the end of the movie, I stood up, and I was fucking clapping. I was so fucking stoked on that movie that I walked out of that saying, like, that wasn't just a movie I enjoy, but this is already, like, one of my favorite fucking movies. And I've watched it, I think, twice since. That one, The Night House.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Anyone that has dealt with, like, suicidal ideation or loss of the loved one because of that stuff, it might be a difficult watch, The Night House. But, that... there's a movie that came out about a year or two ago that kind of flew under a lot of people's radars, but it's something I will try to watch a lot. Starfish.
Don't know that one.
Yeah, it's a movie where like this woman played by Virginia Gardner from 2018's Halloween. She plays this woman who basically her best friend passed away, and it's kind of the end of the world, and she's stuck inside this house, and there's monsters outside, but it's not a monster movie. And she finds these cassettes basically to play for the end of the world. And it's like this really great genre movie kind of about like loss and like losing someone close to you and dealing with it and feeling like basically your whole world's ending. It was a profound fucking movie. But honestly, mostly I've been having to revisit a lot of older movies for like magazine articles. Like I'm kind of knee deep in writing a retrospective on Vamp right now for Scream Magazine. And like
I don't know.
It's from the 80s.
Is that the one from the 80s?
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it. I think I've seen references.
See, like, what's funny about that is growing up in the 80s, I never watched that movie because the VHS cover was so terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And when I watched that movie for the first time as an adult, like, that movie's so campy and over the top and, like, neon and, like, jokey. Like, that it's like... It's almost like a movie that you would like, pizza and beer with buddies, like watching this movie and laughing. Yeah. It's like a guilty pleasure. Yeah, that's a good one.
You're talking about like you were talking about all these things that are recent, like with like loss and like mental strain. Have you seen The Lodge yet?
Dude, that movie fucked me up, and I love it.
Dude, that movie that's one of those movies I'm like, I don't think I'm ever watching this fucking movie again because it's such a kick to the balls. But holy fuck, what a effect that movie had on me. And like that was another movie that got real fucked over by the pandemic, right? Like that night, what the fuck is that not Tusk, but that movie that's coming out that I guess
Lamb?
I thought, is that the one with like the kid and is like going into the house and like his father's a monster or something? It looks like I don't even like.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know that.
Antlers.
Yeah, that's like a Wendigo movie.
Yeah, is that like that's coming out still? Like it's another one of those.
Yeah,
movies
it's finally coming out. I think next month. Yeah, it's basically a movie about the Wendigo, which is like one of my favorite urban legends. Like that Ritual was kind of similar to that. No, there's a new one called Lamb coming out from A24, and it's basically I think this couple that can't have a baby. And this lamb, they start dressing it like a kid, and it walks like that, and it basically turns on them. Like the lodge gave me a feeling that I've only felt one time before, and that was the first time I saw Martyrs. The moment it ended, I said, I don't know if I would never want to watch this movie again, or if I want to go out and buy it. And like I own The Lodge, but I've only seen it once, and I'll probably never watch it again because it's just so rough.
Martyrs is one of those movies that's on my to-do list, but like that movie is. Like, you can't find that fucking movie.
Dude,
like,
I had to buy an import of it, and, like,
Yeah.
I am still, like, yelling at myself internally for how much I had to pay for that.
Yeah. Well, dude, that movie is one of those, like, Josh and I, when we talked about Audition, like, he had been horrified at that movie because it has some kind of, like, legend, right?
Yeah.
And I think Martyrs is up there. Like, it's, like, with one of those movies, like, oh, it's, like, some people can't handle it, and you think of things like that, and one of the movies I don't think I ever actually want to watch, Serbian film.
Yeah, I made that mistake. See, I had a copy of that movie. This is a fucked up story, and I'll never forgive myself for this. Ever forgive myself for this. I had a copy of that movie, and I watched it once, and I was just like, I will never get that time back. I'm not happy that I watched it. But then I was like, that movie made me so fucking miserable that I invited all of my friends and asked my brother if we could have pizza and a movie at his house. And I brought it over to his house and watched it with pizza. One of my friends gets up at the end of the movie and he just goes, "Fuck Jerry," and walked out the door. My brother got up and he goes, "Hey, I'll be right back, guys." And he was like really soft. And my brother's like the most cholo white guy ever. Like he even has like the smile now, cry later tattoo and lowriders and stuff. My brother's tough. Like he has seen some shit. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be right back, guys." And he was gone for like 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? He came out and I go, "Where did you go, dude?" And he goes, "I just woke up my son. I just wanted to give him a hug." And I was like, what? And like, dude, they didn't talk to me for like a fucking week. Just because I was so miserable by that movie that I just had to make someone else miserable. And see, the shitty thing about this is I think that movies like a Serbian film are always compared to movies like Martyrs. And it's a bummer because Martyrs, I think, has some really good themes about what comes after we die. Is there a profound moment or is it bullshit? What, all this pain that we go through, is it worth something?
Yeah.
Whereas a Serbian film is a dude sticking his dick in someone's eye socket. You know what I mean? Like,
it's one of those movies that you just like, it's kind of like, if all the hubbub over the Human Centipede when it came out, right? And you go, and I to this day I joke that, and I actually don't even joke, I think the South Park episode, The Human Centipede, was worse than the Human Centipede. And
it's pretty tame,
but
right?
Like, it's not, but like it's that the idea of causing, and dude, French cinema is fucking whack, man. Like it's out there. Like if like what is it? God damn it. My brain is failing to me. High Tension is one of those movies that is pretty notorious, right? And one of those movies that I'm like, damn, I love this movie. The ending, I'm not like, I don't hate the ending. I think the ending's a little wonky with if you go back and line it up. But like that and stuff like they is really fucked
so
up.
good, but gnarly.
Yeah.
Inside.
It's just Inside's another one of those movies that's been on my list to see that like I never see it streaming anywhere, and like I'm waiting till I see it. And I'm like, oh yeah, because that. If you ever watch videos on things like What Culture, like they have their own horror channel on YouTube now, and they'll bring up Inside every once in a while and Martyrs, and I try to like skip around. I knew about Inside for a long time before that, but like it's never come across it and like a chance to go see it. Hey, there's another one that I was wondering if you've seen because of just how talking about feelings in recent horror movies. Have you seen The Stylist yet?
Yeah, I love that movie. Dude, love it.
All I can say, that movie, I watched that movie and I was like, this is what would happen if like Michael from The Office like became a serial killer.
Right.
Because like I literally at one point like covered my eyes like this because I was so like, you felt so bad about how this person was interacting with other human beings that you're like, how and it just makes you feel gross because like it's that kind of person you're like, you know him in real life, you're like, you kind of, but that was one of those movies that like I felt like really like
I felt like shit after that movie, but in a good way. It has like I don't like spoiling things for people, but that movie has such a gut punch ending.
Oh yeah,
to where you see it and you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And like even going back to like High Tension real quick, like my wife hasn't seen a lot of the movies that I grew up on, and even like you know like she watched like a lot of the first movies and different movies. Like she's seen the first Halloween or the first Nightmare on Elm Street. But when we got together, it was kind of my mission to show her all these movies to see kind of the ones that she liked. Yeah. And when I started showing her some of like the French Extreme movies and stuff like that, I was pretty scared, to be honest, because I was like, "Fuck, am I gonna get divorced?" And I showed her High Tension, thinking that she would fucking hate it. And not even like I think a month or two later, she has this like big kind of flag in our room, and it's like it's like a hybrid of High Tension and the cover of Typo Negative's Bloody Kisses album. Like, that's awesome. And she paints shoes of these movies and stuff, and it's like those movies cool. Can either be so like such a turnoff for people, or they like people just latch onto them and enjoy them. Yeah. And dude, I was just gonna say that like
go ahead. Yeah.
Really quickly, like I love what you guys do on the show, and that you guys do focus a lot on foreign and independent movies, because even on like I used to co-host Pod and the Pendulum, and a lot of the movies, like that whole podcast, the whole theme was basically movie franchises. And after a while, you really don't want to talk about Joyride 2. You know what I mean? Like, I come from like an independent background myself as far as like my taste. And it's cool to have a show that kind of focuses on that.
So Josh does a lot of like shorts in like Canada and stuff like that, and does all this stuff and connected to the Canadian film scene. And that means a lot. And it's like, man, like, no disrespect, because there's a lot of podcasts on this network I really, really enjoy, in other horror podcasts I follow. But like you start seeing like these like 6th movie talking about Jaws, or podcasts talking about Jaws, or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or like you're like, man, I love these movies, but like how many times do you want to listen to a discussion about a movie that is like iconic, And it's nothing bad, because there's a lot of them that I still enjoy listening to. It's just, I feel like you talking about stuff that people haven't talked about, and it's like it hits because people are like, "Oh, I've never heard of this movie. I'm not going to listen to this." And I'm like, I'm okay with that, because I'm doing this to talk about cool shit, and have fun with talking about it. Because if you're not having fun doing this, the people aren't going to have fun listening to it. Right?
No, I agree 100%. Like, dude, like like I said earlier, Halloween 4 is the most important movie in my life. But I have probably been on 12 shows to talk about Halloween 4, and I have nothing. I have nothing left to fucking say about that movie.
Yeah. It's, man, like, it's the things like I've talked about. Like, I talked about Alien with Undead in Santa Carla, one of my favorite movies of all time. I still think it's like one of those things where it's weird, where like I don't think the Alien especially gets as I feel like people have that like registered as a sci-fi movie and not a slasher movie. And just like the same, I've had an argument where I have people, like, I stream on Twitch like 4 days a week, and I have people giving me shit all the time because I told them Terminator is a slasher movie. They're like,
fuck
no,
yeah, it is.
And I watched it with a member of my community who had never seen it on Friday. She's like, he's killing everyone. I'm like, yeah, it's slashing. She's like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, it's the same guy. So it's like all that stuff where you go, what people's opinions about some of these stuff are a little weird, and like, it doesn't matter. I have a French bulldog named Ripley because Aliens is Alien, and Aliens are such important movies.
Have you played the board game yet?
No.
I just picked it up like 3 or 4 days ago. I haven't even opened it. I'm dying to play that.
Dude, my problem with those is like my wife and I have a bunch of like copies of like Ticket to Ride and other stuff. And the problem ends up being, it's like, especially now, it's like all my friends went off and got married like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And like I don't see any of them anymore. And so many of those board games required 3, 4, 5 people to play them. And so it's like I have so many board games that I've been like, I really want no one to play with, and so it sucks, but man, it's one of those things that board games are especially now. I'm like, how many I haven't played a board game outside of some Ticket to Ride with my wife since the pandemic started.
What's great about board games, especially during the pandemic, is it's helped me, I think, get closer to my family a lot. Like I think we have every form of Mixtape Massacre. And that is the biggest bonding experience for my family, is just spend hours playing that shit. But even like going back to like the genres and, you know, people saying the Terminator isn't this and that kind of stuff. I think that I've noticed that happening with Malignant. You know, James Wan said he wanted to make a movie that was kind of his homage to what he loves about giallo movies. He never once said he was making a giallo movie. Yeah. And then everyone, like, I've seen all these people that call themselves authorities on things, and that drives me nuts right from the get-go. You will never hear me say I'm an expert on something, because I feel like every person has growth to be had. And, like, these people are like, well, you know, it can't be a giallo because of this. And it's just like, who the fuck cares? Like,
it's you're putting movies in fucking boxes, and it's not necessary. It's like, it's the whole like, I'll give shit about it, but like the whole thriller. Oh, this is a thriller. This is a horror, and it's like, does it really matter? Like, Seven's not a horror movie, but it has some of the most horrifying shit in the world in it because of the subject matter, right? Like, and like, dude, I look back. My dad, when I was like a kid. I mean, like, again, like back when it came out, he took me and my brother and a friend down the street to see 8mm.
Oh yeah,
with Nicolas Cage.
Love that one.
Because he didn't know what it was. I think my dad was a gun fanatic, and he thought it was a military movie, and nope. And that's a thriller that has, you're like,
and what's crazy is the original script for that was even darker. At the end of the original script, Nicolas Cage kills himself because he can't recover from what he's seen. Like, that movie is so dark.
It's super dark, man. And it's not a horror movie, but you go through a fucking horrible experience because of the shit that's happening. And you go, oh, does the distinction really matter? It's just, it's art, man. And it's like complaining about what Van Gogh is, or like, you know, it just... Enjoy the fucking ride, man. Enjoy it, because that's all that fucking matters.
Especially like, something like Malignant, because that is what it is. It's a fucking ride from start to finish. You don't know where it's going. And when we were watching it, I was texting my wife because I didn't want to say anything out loud in front of my kids. I was texting her and said, okay, I have 3 theories about what this movie might mean. Like what it might be, what the twists are. And she's like, okay, what are they? Yeah. And I was like, here are my 3 theories. I'll be happy if one of them are right, or one of them's right, or even none of them are. But here they are. And what made this movie so fucking rad, and without giving anything away, is I was right about all 3 of them. Yeah. Like, go ahead.
I was gonna say, really early on, I had what ended up being a partial correct of the ending. Like, it was, I'll tell you when we get to spoiler stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, because it was like, they kind of have you, there's so much guessing throughout the front of this movie, and you go, oh, okay. And you kind of feel smart, maybe not smart, but you're like, oh, I kind of figured this out. And it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, that's cool. Like, it's a good feeling when you kind of like, because there's a big difference between, like, I talk about it, like the last Saw movie, Spiral. That movie, as soon as the killer came onto screen, I was like, that's the killer. And it made the rest of that movie go, oh, it's just not, like, I didn't hate it, but like it's such a bummer when something is so predictable, like so predictable that you go, why is this like that? And Chris Rock's acting, man. I love Chris Rock, but his acting in that movie was okay at best at times.
I own that movie, but my wife refuses to watch it because I showed her the trailer and she was just like, I can't do this movie because the trailer just looks like it's an SNL skit. Like it looks like a fake trailer that would be on SNL. Like Chris Rock, like he's a good actor, but like why is he in this movie?
Yeah, because he wrote it. That's why.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that Saturday Night Live sketch where Jeremy Renner was on and he was making fun of being Hawkeye, where he was like, "I'm out of arrows now. I can't do anything." During the Battle of like New York. It's a very good way to put it. Like Chris Rock was like, yeah, I love it. Yeah, let me do it. Like let me do a. Just the IMDb synopsis is in the movie, right? It says, Madison is paralyzed by shocking visions of grisly murders, and her torment worsens as she discovers that these waking dreams are, in fact, terrifying realities. So I said Brian from Dead in Santa Carla was on last week with me, and we watched this cool little Australian slasher movie called The Furies.
It's great.
Which is on Shudder. Yeah. And I was like, man, you know what? The transition scenes in that movie reminded me of the transition scenes in this movie, but they're cool. They're cooler in this movie, obviously. But I was like, man, it's weird to see like two movies in a row, like randomly like this, that like we're talking about that like have like that out of body kind of experience in them, right?
Then like a lot of gripes about Malignant, like are reasons that I love it. Like, someone made a jab saying, well, this movie just seems like an Evanescence music video. Like, what the fuck? Sign me up. I'm not even a fan of them, but, like, okay. Yeah. Like, I want to see something weird and fucking wacky.
Dude, we have so much shit that's exactly the same in, like, horror and, like, all this stuff. And, like, I don't understand people going... Like, I made a joke, and I kind of felt like... This movie felt like someone who thought they were into 50 Shades of Grey, like BDSM stuff, and then like someone pulled out a strap on and they're like, oh, maybe I'm not into BDSM. Like that's like kind of like the kind of thing I feel like I'm a horror person, and then they watch this movie, but this like I feel like it's like this movie feels like a weed out with horror with I don't know, man. Like I don't want to say that it's. I just think this movie is so weird and cool and out there, dude. I'm not spoiling the scene. I watched the fucking the police the police station scene, the big action scene towards the end, and I went, fuck, man, this is like I felt like James Wan was directing a fucking Matrix movie, just horror version of it for a little bit, and I'm like, he's just doing stuff that he thinks is fuck. And there's so much in this movie that is just like you sit there and go, dude, the first time you watch this movie, and one of the reasons I got really excited about talking to you with your background in music, the soundtrack to this movie is fucking weird, but it's really fucking cool. Like it's like one of the more unique horror soundtracks I've heard in a while.
What I love about James Wan's entire career is that he knows which composer is best at what he wants. Like like Charlie Clouser doing the music for Saw, that that is such recognizable music. But like ever since James Wan hooked up with Joe Bashara, Insidious, The Conjuring, The Malignant, like I think Joe Bashara's like score work, like his music in this movie. God, man, like that was the quickest pre-order of any vinyl I've ever, I think, done. That and my wife with the new Candyman movie. Like, oh my God, I love the fucking music in this movie, and it feels like this weird hybrid of like great, like just. Oh man, just a great score, but also like something you could kind of shred on a skateboard to at the same time.
Yeah.
I would have killed to have this on a cassette player when I was like 15 skateboarding.
It's very like, it's almost like if John Carpenter was like born 30 years after, like it's got that.
Or if Carpenter had like a bunch of shrooms. Like my friend Chris, Chris, he's in a band Under Oath. he messaged me and he goes, "Hey, I'm about to watch Malignant for the first time. Should I watch this movie high?" And I go, "If you watch that movie, you are high." Like, like this movie. I told someone when I first watched it, I was like, "Dude, I just watched Malignant." And my friend was like, "Oh, how was it?" And I go, "It feels like a movie that was straight to VHS that I rented in like 1992." And he goes, "That bad, huh?" And I go, "No, that good." Like, this movie would be a good double feature with, like, Scanner Cop 3 or something like that.
Dude, it's just a love. Like, we talked about a while, like, for Pride Month, we talked about this movie called Der Samurai.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. That movie, it was another movie that was, like, very, like, you're like watching this movie and you're like trying to figure out the whole time what is actually happening, and then Josh got obsessed with chopping dicks off because of the ending of that movie.
Rightfully
like,
so.
But like, it's one of those movies where you just like, when you go and you can't stop thinking about a movie after you watch it. Like, I think of going and I watched The Witch from like at my home, and then like immediately after I watched that, I was like Googling explanation videos about the ending of that movie. Not because like I didn't understand it, but I was like, oh, what are people saying and thinking about this, and what does it mean? And like, it's one of those things. It was like, fuck, was that movie? We watched a movie. What the fuck was it called? It was about a girl who was having these nightmares. What the fuck was it called? And she was in this sleep study.
I think I know what you're talking about. God.
And it gets really weird at the end, and you're like, I was like Googling, we've done so, and this, like I said, this is our 52nd episode, so I'm going to look at this up this real quick while, but it's one of those things where you like, when a movie comes up, like, it
wasn't The Quiet Ones, was it?
No, it was here. Let me see. I'm looking up the episode because I want to see what do you know when my brain is like this, because I've had one of those days where you go, oh, okay, why is my brain doing what it's doing? But it's been like that all night, apparently. I think I'm tired, but yeah, so it's one of those, here, I'm going to look it up but when you have that experience where you go, this movie is making me think about these things and thinking, what is happening? Why is it making me feel the way it is? That's a cool thing, man. Like,
and like, I hate movies that kind of give you all of their cards. I like movies that kind of like, I showed a group of friends the remake of Suspiria, and one of their moms was there too for some weird reason. And then afterwards, the mom was like, "Okay, so what does that movie mean?" And I go, "Well, I don't know. What does it mean to you? Like, I'm not here to explain a movie." Like, in 2015, I was at Fantastic Fest, and I went to a press screening of a movie called February. It was called February at the time. And it was such a fucking insane experience that, like, I had to talk about that movie to, like, the dude I was getting an Airbnb with for, like, at least 2 or 3 hours. And they renamed it The Blackcoat's Daughter, and it came out.
Dude, that movie is fucking a trip, man.
Oh, dude, I saw that Fantastic Fest. Like, I watched that movie 3 different screenings that week because I had to watch it multiple times to wrap my head around it. I love movies like that.
Yeah. That movie, and I think I've only watched it once. I could see wanting to see that twice, 3 times, because of the timeline of that is fucking insane the first time. I found the movie, it's called Come True, that we talked about.
Oh, on here. I haven't seen that. I've heard of that one.
It's really fucking trippy, but the end of that movie, you're like sitting there going, what, huh? Because it like sells itself as one thing, and then it does a really good job of transitioning. It's another like Canadian independent movie, and it's fucking gorgeous to look at and has really cool shit. And you're like, oh man, it just leaves that effect on you where you like talking about it, thinking about it, and you're like, what the fuck? And you're like, in that you could do that shit with horror.
That's really great, I think, about movies like Malignant and so many others that are so divisive, because whether or not you love them or hate them, there's conversations being had. Like, I loved Possessor. My wife fucking hated it, but we talked about it for hours.
Yeah, that movie is. It's, man, you go, this motherfucker is like just like his dad, man. It's like you go, this guy is doing this thing. What we talked about it. There's an episode where we talked about that movie, and what we liked so much about it was like that movie it doesn't treat the audience like idiots. It sets you up in this universe and just let you come in and figure shit out, right? Like you're like in this established world and you're figuring out and catching up, but it's not teaching or treating the audience stupid. It's going, okay, this is what's happening and this is where the story we want to tell. You're going to get hints about why this is the way it is, and we're going to explain some stuff as the story tells, but like you're figuring out this character's background and why this is happening, that whole movie, and it's a fucking ride, man. That movie's dope.
And like honestly, like especially with like how much progress that I think we're all making with like LGBTQ issues. Yeah. I think Possessor is such a good movie about identity and like so much that like I think there's so many, not messages because it's not like a message movie, but I think there's so much like stuff in that movie that you could really latch onto and kind of have really good conversations about it.
Yeah, I mean that's why like we talk about Door Samurai. That movie is like that has that same kind of thing, right? Where you're sitting there talking about why this character is doing this stuff, and it's why he has what his own opinion of himself is, and like what he's trying to hide, and what this other character means, and that's the kind of stuff where you're just like, man, it's just such a. That's why I love what Shudder does, because Shudder has that movie as one of the queer horror selections. And how Shudder curates their movies, man, is so fucking good, man. It's like I just watched the Columnist, which is on Shudder now, and it's Dutch, I think is what it is. Mm-hmm. And that movie, did you ever see Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
Yeah.
You know where they at the end of the movie where they go around finding people that talk shit about them and kick their asses?
Yeah.
It's like that, but a horror movie.
Wow.
And it is fucking, it's like, you're like, I think the movie was good, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I think the how it was approached and stuff is way cooler than like a lot of like, it's a simple concept, but man, you're like, this is a hell of a ride. And it does something that I love, which is it has the blood on white. Blood on white is always so good.
Yeah, it never like. And see, I'm not a huge fan of Halloween 6. Like, I'm not going to talk shit about it, but like, I get why people like it. It's just not for me. But there's one shot in that movie that I love, and that's when Michael Myers swings the axe at the lady, then all of a sudden that white sheet just gets splattered.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. And what's cool about Shudder? Go ahead.
I was gonna say stuff like Dead Snow. Dead Snow is if you the zombies and snow and blood. It's that contrast that's so good.
No, that's why I'm dying. That's why I'm dying for a Friday the 13th movie in the snow, and that's what I loved about Never Hike Alone, second one.
Never Hike in the Snow. Never Hike in the Snow.
Yeah. I love that one. I love all of those so far. But Shudder, like what I love about Shudder is it had. Like, going into it, when it first launched, I kind of had the idea of, like, oh, it's going to be another horror streaming thing. We're going to have the same movies. What Shudder is great at doing is giving, like, lifelong horror fans what they love, but curating a selection of horror films that even someone just coming into the genre could get, like, almost a film school level, like, education on these movies. Yeah. Like, the way that, and I think he's still there, but the way that Sam Zimmerman kind of helped curate Shudder from the beginning, like that dude should get a fucking like Nobel Peace Prize for that fucking service.
Yeah, dude, that movie, like I had such like shameless movies I'd never seen, and I've seen them because of Shudder. Like I'd never seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre before a couple years ago. It was just like one of those movies. Like I was born in '83, so I was born a couple years after you. But like it's one of those things where you just like if you never picked up the VHS. In video stores for a long time, you're like, oh, okay. And then just like, it might be a while, right? But with Shudder does that, and they have those movies, and you're just like, oh, these are important movies. And they have like necessities on there, which you're just like, damn. Yeah, and it's the best $6 a month. Like Josh and I have been obsessed with Psycho Goreman ever since it came on there.
Yeah, I love
Psycho
that
Goreman
movie.
is one. That movie's so fucking fantastical.
I bought the deluxe Blu-ray of it came with like the trading cards and shit.
Oh, dude!
And my kids keep asking. My kids keep asking for them. I'm like, no, dude, you guys are gonna have to get your own.
Dude, that movie has been like one of those. Like I think out of 52 episodes now, we've talked about since we saw Psycho Gorman almost every episode because we love it so much.
That's awesome.
The Void is such a cool movie, man.
Dude,
like the one the director
I
did before
do
that.
not know why more people don't talk about that movie. That movie feels like The Void felt like Clive Barker, fucking Fulci, everything all in one. Like, and I know that. See, I know that. Like, let's just like going back to Lords of Salem. You know, Rob Zombie had like he kind of made that movie as he went along. Like literally, he was making shit up on the fly. So the fact that Lords of Salem came out at all as good as it did is surprising. But The Void, they had so many troubles making that movie. And even the filmmakers aren't satisfied with it. But just as like an audience member, I fucking love the fuck out of that movie.
Yeah. So one of my favorites of all time is probably it's probably my second favorite horror movie after Alien is The Thing. Yeah. And that movie just gave me Thing vibes. Like like no Thing. Like it's that movie was, I was like, oh man, I dig this for sure because of that. And just awesome practical effects. And you know what? I do want to, it's kind of a good transition back to Malignant because this movie had a lot of CGI gore and effects with kills and stuff. But what I love, what James does with this, he knows that they aren't like, you can't linger on them, right? He doesn't do stuff where you're like staring at CGI blood forever. It's like flashes that you go, oh, that looks cool. And you can't sit there and nitpick it and stare at it for too long because it's that, man, practical effects in horror will always be superior. And like, I don't know what percentage of the effects were practical in this, like with like, I think back to like in the opening, like seeing that guy's arm being broken when he's sticking his and like
Mike Mendez, dude. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Oh, was that?
Yeah.
And man, it's just James Wan knows. He knows what like because that's the problem, right? Like you only doing practical effects. Practical effects cost money because they take time to do.
Yeah.
They're not fucking expensive to do, right? Most of the time. They take time to do. And that's like, that's the big deal. And so like did they shoot this movie last year? I don't even know when they shot this movie.
I think that I think it was supposed to come out late last year, but because of the pandemic and stuff. So probably around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, it's funny, man. It talking about people like my little sister is not a horror person, and she calls me the other day and she goes, "What horror movie should I watch?" And I go watch *Malignant," and she's like, "I heard it was bad." I'm like, "No, it's not." And then I heard afterwards that movie was terrible. I'm like, I'm sorry, I loved it. That's all that really matters. I was trying to share something that I approved of, but that's the problem with like in movie taste, man. Like if someone tells you they like something and you go watch it and you hate it, like you're like, oh, that was terrible.
See,
like,
I love when that happened. Or when that happens. A friend of mine was just like, he's like, yeah, I watched *Malignant*. Like, yeah, what'd you think? He's like, I hated it. And I was like, that's cool. And he's like, wait, I thought you liked it. And well, I do. That doesn't change how I feel about a movie.
Yeah.
Like,
well, dude. It's something to talk about, which is cool. Like,
and then, like, I know the phrase is overly used these days, but I mean, art is subjective. Just because I love something, I'm never going to tell someone that they're wrong. And that's like something that I just can't stand about social media. I would burn down every form of social media I had if it wasn't really important for like networking and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Because most opportunities I've had throughout the years have been because of things like Twitter or Facebook or things like that. Yeah. But it becomes such a just hellscape of people just pointing their finger like, oh, you liked this? Well, you're a fucking idiot. And it's like, I don't get that.
Yeah. Like it's like telling someone that like you like sushi, so you're an asshole. It's like it doesn't make any sense to me. Like taste is not universal, man. Like I give my wife shit because my wife often eats like a 6-year-old. I say she likes macaroni and cheese and like stuff like that and cheese pizza, but like I'm never actually giving her shit about it, right? It's like it's subjective taste. It doesn't matter, right? Like, and I don't know, man. Like it's funny. Like I've heard like one person. Like maybe two people. I've heard we only had a couple people with this movie that had mixed opinions, and one of them is a streamer friend of mine, and she said her issue with the movie was she didn't like the acting of the main character. Like.
See, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, that I like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, it's so bad it's good, because I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't at all. But I do think a lot of those choices were intentional. And a lot of those choices are kind of a sleight of the hand to fool you into thinking something's very different than what it is. Yeah. Like, the melodramatic elements of it are so intentional that I can't help but love them. I can't help but love the fact that I hate the first 15 minutes of this movie.
Yeah. Well, the opening of this movie sets up something where you're like, I don't know who watches this movie and doesn't cheer when the first kill happens I guess the first kill in current timeline happens, right? Because you're like, yeah, fuck that, because you don't like, you're already not liking the character that happened to, right? And so it's like, it's stuff like that where you're like, oh, okay, dude, like everything in this movie, from the house, which is like, he shot it like the Psycho house, like he shot it like real low to the ground, like looking up at the house the whole time, right? And dude, that fucking ceiling shot in this movie is amazing, fucking brilliant. Right? Yeah, it's like, how the fuck was he zooming his camera like around the top of this house, because it's like this really open house at portions, but like it's such a cool shot, and you're like, I don't know how he did this. He probably set up rigs like on the ceiling, right, and ran the camera around, but it's so cool shot that you're like, fuck, that's cool, man. Like,
well, that, and like I see James Wan, like everyone like claims that he's one of the new masters of horror, and I fucking definitely agree. But I think a lot of people, like, we don't hear a lot of conversations about how much of a visionary he is. Like, when we talk about Saw, everyone talks about like the really like frantic editing and stuff, and how everything after that was kind of like that. But they don't talk about the fact that the guy kind of invented that with that movie, and this movie, like the camera work is phenomenal. Like the way another movie that kind of impressed me like that people hated for some reason was Sinister 2. Yeah. Like Kieran Foy that directed that, like his camera work in that movie, it would sway left and right instead of going straight, or like these really unconventional things. And, like, Malignant, there's so much to love about that movie. And, like, even the melodramatic stuff, if you really think about it, even some of James Wan's best movies have those. Like, I love Insidious with a passion. But if anyone told me it's not cheesy as fuck when the mom's trying to write the song at the piano, I will punch them in the face. Like, but I kind of love that about it. It's, like, these really awkward moments that people have in real life.
Yeah. Dude, horror can be fucking cheesy and embrace it. Like, it's... Dude, I would say if something is made badly, like a horror, like any movie, like, but if a movie's made badly, but like they were like made a movie with love, you can tell, and it makes a bad movie still like watchable. Dude, one of my favorite bad movies of the last few years, we talked about it in the show, was the Fanatic. I don't know if you've seen the Fanatic. It's a fucking shit show of a movie.
I love Devon Sawa.
And fucking John Travolta completely does what they say you shouldn't do in Tropic Thunder. Yeah. And like everything is like, but that movie, like you could tell Fred Durst wanted to do something cool. He didn't. He made a fucking disaster of a movie, but I can watch that movie and just have a fucking blast.
There isn't a single performance in that movie where the actor isn't in on the joke. Yeah. Like James Paxton, Bill Paxton's son, is one of the thugs that basically bullies Travolta. Like all these guys, it feels like I kind of feel like Travolta's the only dude that didn't realize the movie he was going to be in, and he's going for it. Like Travolta acted his ass off to where he probably thought he was going to win an Oscar for that movie.
Dude, the scene with Devon Sawa in the car going about how good Limp Bizkit is the most insane scene in all of cinema history. I like that scene. I swear to God, at some point that scene should be compared to "Oh Hi Mark." Like that level of like just what the fuck, and that I keep telling people to watch that movie, and I don't think they believe me that it's as much of a disaster / like enjoyable.
I tried to show it to my wife once, and she was just like, nope. Like, she gave it, like, I think a couple minutes. She's like, nah, I'm good. But, dude, no, I agree 100% with that movie, man.
It's the same thing with, like, The Room. Like, The Room is not for everyone. But holy fuck, man, you could go in and just kind of enjoy the train wreck because it's like you could see the people. The bad movies are bad, but like the real sin with movies are boring. And if a movie isn't boring, then I'm okay with it. Like, a boring movie will be like, I always go back to like when I was a kid, my dad took me to see The Thin Red Line. Which is like a Pacific, like
it's a war movie where instead of the war, you see a tree.
Yeah, you see the tree and the sky and like tribal penises swinging around for 2.5 hours. Like that movie has like 40, like over half that movie is just like looking at the sky. It's like Ang Lee making the Hulk. It's just like it's too artsy for its own fucking good. But like, and that's like boring. That's just boring. It's completely different. And like, that's why, like, I saw people going, "This is the worst movie I've ever seen." I'm like, man, you have not gone and you weren't watching many movies if you think this is the worst movie you've ever seen. Like, I saw people actually claiming that.
That and like that shit irritates me to like no end. How every movie these days has to be the greatest or the worst movie ever. Sometimes I just want to watch an entertaining movie, and like I try not to hype things up too much. But it seems like anytime I do like a movie, it ends up on like a Blu-ray or a poster, and I get like shit for it for years. Like I really liked Leatherface, like the most recent Texas Chainsaw, and I think I'm one of 5 people that maybe did. And in passing, in a review, I was just like, man, I think I wrote something along the lines like I've enjoyed this one the most since maybe the original 1 or 2 movies.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, on the Blu-ray it said the best Texas Chainsaw movie since the original Jerry Smith. Every time a friend of mine goes to Walmart, they will take a picture of that fucking shit and send it to me. Like, every movie doesn't have to be the best or worst movie. Sometimes movies can just be movies, you know? And
dude,
Malignant's like that. It's what Malignant is there's it's that scene in Workaholics where they're just like, let's get weird. That's what fucking Malignant is. It's just a wild fucking weird bonkers movie.
It's like, it reminds me, like, you know, it just weird shit. Like, it's like you could have seen Nicolas Cage in this movie or something.
Yeah.
Like
as Gabriel.
Willy's Wonderland is a movie where he doesn't have a single line and just weird Nicolas Cage's his ass off, and it's like, it's a fucking blast.
He does the Vogue while he does pinball.
Yeah. That movie is not. I've said this on the show a lot, and I'll talk up a movie for an hour and a half on here and say how much I like it, and I'll be like, this ain't gonna win any Academy Awards, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. Fun is what matters with movies. Dude,
that's so cool that you say that, because I always try to make my friends laugh. If it's a movie that isn't that great but I love it, I'll say the same thing. Yeah. It's not going to win an Oscar, but it might win a Blockbuster Video Award.
Yeah.
When Blockbuster had their own little award show and like nobody gave a shit.
Yeah. It's like, it's like always those fun movies that people love that win Emmys, but not, or they win. Is it Emmys? Like, yeah, and then not Oscars. Is that what? Fuck. What's the other award show? Not the Emmys and Oscars are the same thing, right? What's the other one?
Emmys are like for I think television. Oscars are for film, and then there's the Razzies for the bad movies. Yeah.
Well, there's some other one of the shows that's before the Emmys or the Oscars that like
Golden Globes.
The Golden Globes. Like, they'll give out some awards that are a little bit wonkier, right? Mm-hmm. Like that. The audiences seem to love movies more, that kind of thing. And then, like, obviously they're not going to get those when they go into the actual, like, Academy Awards. But, like, you're like, oh, okay. And, dude, like, I don't know, man. I think someone who watches as many movies as we do, you appreciate movies that are different, right? Like, they aren't, like, the same thing over and over again. And this is, like, this whole time, when you're sitting there watching this movie the first time, you're like, what the fuck is happening? And you go, the shots are cool. The action in this movie is fucking bonkers. Like, and you'll figure out why later on, why it's shot so cool. But man, like, I just don't get how you cannot like this movie. And it's funny. I one of those weird things I saw about this movie that, like, man, the cop of this movie is a good looking man. And I guess I don't know why they had him. There were like shots of him sitting there, like buttoning up his cop shirt. Like, the motherfucker has like an 8-pack. And I'm like, why, James, why weren't you just showing this guy in his like fucking like abs of steel in this movie to get like the ladies more and or just anyone who'd enjoy this because he's a good looking guy. And you go, but then you put these shots out there to like get people to come in and watch this movie when that's not in the movie.
One of my favorite complaints about the movie is that the guy that plays the cop, was it Kakoa Shaw is the character?
Yeah.
George Young that plays him, people are like, well, that guy looks way too young to be a cop. He can't be a cop. That guy's 40-fucking-1.
Jesus.
That dude's 41. Like,
he looks about 22.
I know, the dude's older than I am, and people are like complaining that he's not believable. Like, I see the ridiculous things like button up the shirt and all that shit. Like, it goes back to like James Wan saying he wanted to make an homage to like Giallo films. There's so much nonsensical bullshit in those movies, and I mean that as a compliment. Yeah. Like, dude, like, it doesn't have to be a beat for beat, like, you know, like Giallo by numbers kind of thing. You know, like, I just, the spirit is there. The spirit, dude, and the kind of like outlandish plot, the overacting, like the lighting, like
the gloves. The gloves are a big thing, right? The knife,
the weapon, in this movie
was, the weapon is very like. So like that was let's be honest, Giallo movies have 2 requirements. 1, the killer wears black gloves, and 2, they kill people with a knife. So this can be a Giallo movie if we really think about it, but like
this movie could be a relationship drama on the first 15 minutes. Like, I always get a lot of shit because I always champion the idea that I think horror can be whatever horrifies you. There are movies that are straight up not horror at all that I consider horror films to me. There Will Be Blood is a horror film to me because it's about a man's obsession to destroy everyone in his path. Yeah. You know, like, well, dude, I think labels are fucking dangerous, I think.
Dude, Idiocracy is one of the scariest movies ever made.
We're living through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just coming out now.
That movie made me not go into a Walmart for 2 or 3 years. That's how fucking horrifying that movie, and it's a comedy. But it's the shit where you go, the real life is way scarier than the fucking not real life. And that's the kind of shit you go, God damn, man. Like, why can't people enjoy shit? I don't understand it. Like, dude, it's, there's so much art. There's so much art for everyone. And it's like, then go watch it. If you don't like Marvel, don't watch Marvel movies. If you don't like horror movies, don't go watch horror movies. You don't have to watch this stuff.
I think it took me years growing up to realize that because it used to be like, no, I don't like this. Fuck that kind of movie. And after a while, I can't remember who said it, but like a friend of mine once said, like, dude, like every movie is somebody's favorite movie. You know, like if you don't like it, you don't fucking like it. And that woke me up so much. Like, I'm not the biggest Marvel fan. But, dude, the fact that those movies exist and bring so many people enjoyment and, like, happiness, fuck yeah, dude. Make as many as you want.
Well, dude, you get people like Scott Derrickson to come in and make a movie who, like, it's funny. I gotta try to track that motherfucker down. My wife, he's from Denver, and my wife works with his sister-in-law. And I'm like, I gotta try to get her to, like, hook me up. I would love to sit there and talk to that guy for like an hour about just making movies because, man, Sinister is still one of those movies you go, this is a fucking heavy hitter, man.
My kids were like, no, we really want to watch that. And for the longest time I was like, no, you don't. And then finally one day they were being assholes. I'm just being honest. One day they were being assholes and I was like, well, guys, today's the day you get to watch Sinister. And fuck, man, I don't think they slept that night. Like, that movie still scares the hell out of me. That lawnmower scene is so terrifying. One of my favorite memories ever of Fantastic Fest, it was in 2015 at one of the many fucked up Q&As I've ever been to. And it was a Q&A for the Black Coat's Daughter when it was still called February. And they asked the director, Oz Perkins, who looks exactly like his dad, Anthony Perkins from Psycho. And he looked exactly like him, but with a Supreme hat on. So obviously I hated the dude from the beginning. And they're like, well, what was your inspiration to make Black Coat's Daughter? Or February at the time. And he goes, I just didn't fucking want to make a movie like Sinister. And Cargill, the fucking writer of Sinister, was in the crowd around basically his crew. I mean, this is Texas crew, So, I've never seen a crowd basically turn on someone with, dagger eyes as quick as that moment. Sinister's fucking great, dude.
Yeah. It's funny, man, because Black Coat's Daughter is a fucking ride, but that movie ain't for everyone. I will tell you that much, because it's got weird timelines. It's not clear with a lot of stuff. It's a fucking cool movie. Don't get me wrong, but you're making shots at something like that. I think you can do that way more elegantly. I was just trying to you're saying you wanted to do something weird and different. Cool. But
you don't throw another movie under the bus.
Yeah. And it's just man,
well, there's this dude. I think there's a disdain for genre films, but from some people that maybe might be a little too pretentious to tackle genre films.
Yeah,
it's dude, I love The Witch with a passion. I fucking love that movie. But if I hear Robert Eggers tell us one more time that The Witch isn't a horror film, I'm gonna fucking puke. You know what I mean?
Up, dude.
You made a good movie. Just fucking like it. It's
like the guy who made GIFs and calls them GIFs. It's
Lord.
Just do why are you why do you have to go out there and just try to make, I don't know, man. It's just so weird to me. It's so odd, and I feel I don't know. This is the kind of shit that gets people in Hollywood, that pretentious reputation, you're a pretentious asshat for this kind of stuff. It's Oliver Stone and is giving shit to Marvel, superhero movies aren't real movies, motherfucker. Go in and watch how many times a bad superhero movies come out, and tell me that it doesn't take some kind of fucking skill setup to make one of these movies. It doesn't mean it's your fucking cup of tea, man, but you act like they're not
Scorsese. Dude, Martin Scorsese's one of my favorite fucking directors ever. But motherfucker,
is he the one who said that?
I think there's been 3 or 4 different people that have said that. But it's motherfucker, how many times have you remade Goodfellas under a different name? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love those movies. I can watch Casino every day of the night and still be fucking stoked. But this idea of people scoff at different kinds of movies because they're not for them is just it's alien to me. I took jabs at The Notebook at the beginning, but dude, how many fucking middle-aged moms just get their rocks off watching that Nicholas Sparks shit? All power to them.
Dude, I still remember I had a girlfriend in high school, and we watched A Walk to Remember, and I give that movie shit, but man, that movie made me cry as a fucking high school boy, because
that poor girl found love.
Yeah, and then it's such a sad movie, and you could give those shit in Nicholas Sparks has a shtick, but people love those things, and it's just I will give for someone, my wife liked the Twilight movies, and I went to all of them with her besides maybe the first one because she wasn't like them, and there are parts of those things that I give shit. The last one of those movies has one of my least favorite shticks in all movies. It was all a dream thing. Which
I hate. Is that the one where everybody dies or something like that? Then they're not dead. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. But I stuff like that, and I'm the first one has a fucking kick-ass soundtrack. The soundtrack of that first movie is fucking dope, and stuff like that. I don't see anyone in when you talk about Hollywood people doing this, it's you motherfuckers know how hard it is to make a movie. Unless you're Boll trying to make movies as tax write-off dodge things or whatever the fuck that motherfucker's doing. That motherfucker isn't trying to make a good movie. I'm sorry. Everything that motherfucker ever did wasn't trying to make a good movie.
That guy makes steaming piles of shit for movies, but I will forever respect the fact that he challenged his critics to a boxing match and beat the shit out of everyone.
Yep. Dude, that dude is he's a special character. But you sit there and go, that dude is that dude isn't. I never thought he was actually trying to make good movies. I think there was like schemes about him trying to.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah. It's sketchy.
Yeah. Oh man, man. So like, I just would like, if you don't like this movie, like I want to see. I don't know if I've looked at this. I want to kind of look at Rotten Tomatoes and see what. I guess it's funny because you talk about like the discrepancies between like critics and audiences, right? And like that, if you ever go look at the stylist at one point was like 90% critic approval and 30 something or 20 something audience. That's how like the diverse that movie was. Malignant is a 76, so like the critics have liked the shit out of this movie, but audiences are at 52, man. Like I just feel like that's why it gave me things like, it gave me vibes of like The Witch and like other stuff that's like I don't even know the stuff like The Lighthouse. Man, I love The Lighthouse. There's another movie that
love it. I've never looked at a steak the same way since.
Dude, that was one of those things where I go, if he do you know those motherfuckers when Robert Pattinson got like set up to play Batman, like he can't play Batman. Motherfucker, go look at his actual movies he's made. Like,
see, dude, that has been, I think, one of the fucking coolest things ever. And to be honest, I was a dick when Twilight first came out. I will openly say that. I talked so much shit. But, dude, the fact, like, Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart have both established themselves after those movies as being like, amazing actors. Like, dude, I don't give a shit. I did not enjoy a movie as much as I enjoyed Underwater that year. I watched that movie probably 5 times in the theater.
Dude, that movie was fucking so underrated. It's got like Cthulhu monsters in it, and like it's dude, PG-13 horror movies aren't fucking easy, man. You talk about for everything, like for like Happy Death Day you get or Underwater you get stuff like Prom Night remakes and shit like that. And man, when you do a good PG-13 horror movie, Insidious, we're talking about James Wan, like it's fucking impressive, man. And like, it's not like,
and like everyone coming at James Wan for this movie, it's like, I to be honest, and I'm not saying like, oh, we were here before you guys kind of thing, because I think that's kind of like dangerous for people to do too.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of people went into Malignant having discovered James Wan on Aquaman, or the Fast and Furious movie he did, or maybe the Conjuring movies, which I love them, but they're a bit like more mainstream and kind of easy to be accessible than a lot of stuff. They get into these filmmakers like James Wan, and they see a film like Malignant, which you can totally tell is inspired by a lot of movies that maybe got him into horror. And I think they're awesome to see these filmmakers go make a movie that's kind of an homage to what they love about horror. It is 100% James Wan saying, I have the ability to make whatever the fuck I want now. I'm going to make a movie that's so bonkers that people will either love or hate it. And I love the fact that like people either love or hate this movie.
Yeah, it reminds me of like Death Proof, right?
Yeah.
Like where Quentin Tarantino wanted to do like that 70s exploitation kind of like film with that, and it's like that dialogue in that movie is so fucking fantastic, but it just drove a bunch of people out, and like bunches of people didn't know what they were getting and getting themselves into, right? It was that kind of thing where that movie did not do well at the box office, and like Planet Terror was a ton of fun, but that movie was way more forgettable than what Death Proof ended up being.
When I saw that in the theater, half of the people left after the first movie because they didn't get the whole Grindhouse experience of it. It was weird.
Yeah. And it will forever bring us Machete, and something my wife and I say to each other all the time. Still, Machete don't text. Like, and it's still
see. Like, I quote Grindhouse too, but it's usually like me walking down the stairs naked, going, "This is my Mecca." Like Nicolas Cage in the Rob Zombie's fake trailer, dude, is great.
Yeah.
That and like there's a moment in Malignant that I just have to point out every time because it made me laugh.
Yeah.
I wrote and directed a short film in 2016 called Love Is Dead, starring Joanna Angel, Aaron Thompson, and Ruben Pla was in the movie. And he's in Malignant as the kind of bald cop at the end with the mustache.
Yeah.
So it was such a trip to see that dude on the big screen having he directed this dude in a short film out of nowhere 4 or 5 years ago.
It makes me laugh because Brian and I talked about Jacob's Wife a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize CM Punk was that cop at then, because it didn't look at all like him with that fucking mustache.
Did you see the movie that he did before that, Girl on the Third Floor? Did you like that one?
Yeah, I liked it. He was a piece of shit in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you go... it's always weird with me with movies that have no redeemable characters. It doesn't I always talk about Midsummer, and I'm like, the movie's beautiful, but there isn't a likable character in this entire movie. And
everyone has their own agenda. I hate the boyfriend character in Midsummer, but I also think the friend that kind of conned them to come to the whole thing was kind of just as shitty in some ways.
Oh yeah, because he knew it was going to happen to him.
That dude set them up hardcore.
Yeah, it was it's weird because that's the type of thing where that guy knew what he was doing. I mean, Ari Aster, that motherfucker, man. When you come out going, Hereditary into Midsummer, you're something special, man. And that's kind of the thing with Jordan Peele and Us and Get Out. It's that kind of thing where you're hitting those fucking masterpieces right away, right? And it's kind of like what James Wan did, and he came out fucking swinging, right, man? And it's
he's one of the most successful horror directors of all time already. The amount of money this dude has made. This dude has single-handedly created how many franchises? It's unheard of. It's funny, man, because of the credit and the love people have for him. The shit that, dude, The Nun is one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. I watched it once, and I could barely do it that first time. Yeah,
it's boring.
That's another bummer because the director of that is so good. His other movie, The Hallow, is so fucking good.
It wasn't he the one who did. It was the one who did the other bad movie. It was the guy who did La Llorona or whatever. Did the third Conjuring movie, which was good. I mean, it wasn't as good as the other two, and it wasn't. I don't think that movie was scary. We talked about that on an episode here too, but it was an enjoyable movie though, right? And so that universe is had a lot of stuff that is good, and also some stuff that's real bad. And so, but no one ever worries about it because it's James Wan, and all those movies make tons of money anyways, right? So, yeah. So, we're pretty much on. We're both saying go watch this fucking movie, but don't get mad at us if you don't like it. This movie is very.
This movie is movie is like that friend that's always high and you don't quite understand what the fuck they're saying, but you really like being around that person. And you kind of, the thing is, you really hope that they get clean at some point, but if they get clean and they're not weird, they're not going to be fun to be around. So you're secretly hoping they stay on drugs. That's Malignant.
It's like Taco on The League. Did you ever watch The League?
Yeah.
It's Taco. Yeah, it's Taco from The League. If you've never seen that, where he's the idiot stoner buddy, and then he gets sober for an episode, and he's respectable, and no one likes him anymore because he's not.
One of my favorite little anecdotes is from Keith Buckley, the singer of my favorite band of all time, Every Time I Die. While they were making one of their albums, he was talking about how he realized that he was tired of being the hungover dude all the time, so he stopped drinking. Yeah. But then he realized he hated himself when he doesn't drink, so he started drinking again.
Yeah.
Malignant is that. It's just fucking. It's being as high as you can be without being high. And I mean that in a good way. It's a fucking ride. It's like going to Six Flags and riding the Goliath. You're going to shit your pants. You might not enjoy some of the turns, but after it's over, you're fucking stoked.
Yeah, it has everything, man. It has cool visuals. It's got a cool story. It's got violence. It's got some fucking brutal things.
Yeah.
It's got some of the it's got more arms being broken out of things than I've seen in most movies, and it's horror movies, the fire
escape scene, dude.
Yeah.
That was like straight up like parkour shit from like the main villain.
Yeah, it reminds me of what that D13, that French movie, if you ever saw
I haven't seen that one, no.
They remade it with Paul Walker at some point. I forget what it was called, but it was a weird parkour post. It was weird, but it's interesting. But yeah, so go watch this movie, man, before it gets out of especially if it gets off of HBO Max in a couple weeks, because it's a fucking ride, man. And it's one of those movies. I think this movie's gonna. It didn't make any money like it in the theaters, but like it's gonna make I feel like this is gonna be a cult classic in not that long from now, because this movie is so unique and so like different and well made and interesting and provoking and all these things, right?
I will fucking bet money that this will become a franchise. I just have a fucking feeling, even if it's straight to VOD for some later sequels, and I will fucking love. I want to see one of these every year. I want, like, even if the later Saw movies really weren't for me, the fact that I would go every October to see them in the theater. I want to see a new Malignant movie every other year. Like I could see this being like a thing that lasts for a while.
Yeah, it's a cool movie. And like again, you might hate it, but if you hate it, you have something to talk about. You have something to discuss, and it's an interesting thing, man. Like I commented like some guy on Twitter like talking about it, and they were like, yeah, like I was like, I think a lot of non-horror fans hate this movie. And then I had someone respond to me, I'm a horror fan and I hated this movie too. And I'm like, man, it's really strange how diverse this movie is. And I mean, that means a lot. But we're going to spoil the shit out of this, because I just want to talk about certain scenes and things about this movie that are super unique. And so go watch it. Go follow Jerry. I'll have links in the episode to his Twitter and shit. So he has cool shit on there. So follow him, and he's cool people. So follow him. Go watch this movie if you haven't, and we're gonna go on and spoil the shit out of it. So, man, I have to say, we're gonna like kind of want to talk about like real quick, like what your early, because you were talking about what you wrote down or texted your wife at the beginning. So I would say what I thought at the very beginning of this movie when we started watching it, I was like after like I think the first scene or the first fairly early on, I assumed that it was her twin doing all this, but I thought he was disconnected from her body. I didn't see the fucking popping out of the back of her head thing. What was your kind of early? You said you guessed in all three of them were correct, so I'm kind of curious on where you were.
I texted my wife that I had like 3 guesses, and I hoped at least one of them would be right. I guessed that it was either. I sent her a gif of Belial from Basket Case, and she's like, "Yeah, I can see that." So I thought it was like a conjoined twin that was removed at the beginning, because the beginning had that scene. I thought it could be her the whole time, mental illness or like maybe trauma from getting her head hit really hard at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I thought it could be her. I thought it could be a twin, or what was the third one? There was another one. It was like I can't remember what the third one was, but it was like really in line in that whole thing too. And like when it was revealed that basically, the other one was an imaginary friend. I thought that was kind of it too, and it kind of like steered you the wrong direction for a little bit, making you think it was that. Yeah. So like the idea that the movie played with kind of all 3 of them, it felt like a weird hybrid of like Basket Case, Daniel Isn't Real, Drop Dead Fred, and like just some like gnarly ass like almost Total Recall Quado shit. You know, like I love it.
Well, it's the Quado thing is like the interesting thing because of his psychic powers in the first Total Recall, right? And the electric, I wonder, and I am curious, like I figured that the electric power thing that happens with what's his name, Gabriel, was only because he could for a communication device, right? Like, was that the kind of like the feeling that you got with that also?
Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah, because it doesn't like, it's not necessary. Doesn't like, the only thing he does with it is like it blows lights out, which can like, jump scares and stuff like that. But like as a character thing, it only really gives us that like that communication into his whatever's left of Gabriel. Also, I think the name Gabriel was a fucking real wise decision because you're usually going like Damien or, like you're going with an angel's name as this character who, as like the little girl goes off and calls him the devil, right? So I thought that was an interesting thing to go with in like a very like heavenly. And James Gunn's fucking smart enough, like to he knew what he was doing with that, right? It's funny, man, because one of those movies that I saw recently in the last like couple years that I had never seen before was The Exorcist 3. And The Exorcist 3, I think, is still one of those movies that is fucking so highly underrated for what it does and how cool it is and how unique it is. And I think
that's
one
my
of the
second favorite movie of all time.
Yeah. Dude, is it really? Dude, that movie is fucking... I probably like that movie better than the original because I probably saw The Exorcist in my 20s for the first time, and I'm 38 now. And that movie was like, I'm like, this is really good. It wasn't scary, like at all to me as some, who like watches tons of horror movies. But The Exorcist 3 is just fucking bonkers and fucking off the wall and like cool and unique and does all these really strange things. And by the time I saw it, I had the jump scare, like the most notorious jump scare of all time ruined for me. But that movie's still fucking bonkers, and I really, really enjoy it.
I love that movie. I'm actually writing a book right now for Bear Manor Publishing about William Peter Blatty's Faith trilogy, which is The Exorcist, The Ninth Configuration, and The Exorcist 3. So that book that I'm writing about it's coming out next year. Yeah, Exorcist 3. Like awesome. I have that poster hanging above my office, like right next to me right now. I love that movie,
dude. It's so fucking cool. Like it's one of those movies I think, especially after how bad Exorcist 2 was. I've never seen Exorcist 2, but I've heard it. Yeah. I've heard it's a nightmare.
My favorite thing on the Exorcist 3 that they have the Blu-ray that Scream Factory put out, and Brad Dourif they're interviewing him about Exorcist 3, and he's talking about Exorcist 2, and he goes, "Yeah, it was a fucking piece of shit." And you never hear people say that on like special features,
Yeah, dude. It's so funny, man. He's another thing. We go back to, we were talking about Halloween 2. He's one of the best parts of both those zombie movies. Like
without a doubt. The scene where he finds Annie in Halloween 2.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's hard.
And they show the home videos from like Danielle Harris when she was little.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
dude,
it's fucking heartbreaking. Yeah. That motherfucker I don't think ever gets enough like credit like for all the shit he did. Like him as fucking Chucky, man, is
so good. And even The Exorcist 3, like that whole monologue. Oh my God. I think it's one of the best monologues of all time.
Yeah. Well, because it's such a fucking out of left field. Not out of it's such a weird thing that when it happens in that movie, you're like, what the fuck? Oh, that's fucking cool as shit.
Yeah.
Like it's such a cool turn, man. It actually it kind of has that Chucky vibe to it, right? Because the dead serial killer coming back to kill people, right? But man, I would say that fucking that opening scene where they like kind of fuck with you, like, is so well done and Malignant with just because James does what he does that is so fucking impressive. Is he shows you the little panda socks, like to like show you like, oh, that this thing can't, because it's not like this individual can't be scary. They're wearing panda socks. But then I don't know if you noticed this. The second time I watched it, you see Gabriel's face, since you know what Gabriel looks like, from the movie, and you're like, oh, there he, like it like it's way.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Wow.
Yeah. You see his face through the glass or whatever there towards like the beginning of that movie, and you're like, oh, there's Gabriel, and and it's because you know what Gabriel looks like, right? But man, I want to like fucking James Wan in what he does with the what is her actual name, the character? Because she has two names. Madison Mitchell is the character's name in the movie, right? But she's really like. She's Emily was her real name, like before she was adopted. She has the fucking husband who is the worst fucking piece of shit in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Who is, we talk about all the time, like that story that's going on in the news with the YouTuber who got fucking taken out by the boyfriend or whatever. And it was the same kind of fucking relationship like with what was in this movie, right? Like it's funny and not funny, but it's like it's ironic that story's happening while that beginning of that Malignant is so like, you know, prevalent right now.
Well, that and like the way that they gaslight their victims, you know, you know, kind of like why'd you make me kind of do this kind of thing, or I'm sorry, and they don't immediately get forgiven, so they immediately lash back out at them, like it's rough. It's rough. I think that opening is.
It does that thing where it makes you hate this character real fast because he shoves her head against the wall. And she's fucking like,
bleeding badly out of it.
Yeah,
and like
that's. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say the head bleeding is one of the mysteries the first time you watch this movie, right? Like
that, and like we think immediately that this dude has probably caused so many miscarriages to her, so we hate his fucking guts right from the get go. And even by the end of the movie, you still hate that character and you're glad he's dead. But you also find out that Gabriel was the one kind of feeding off the babies and killing them. Like, dude, it's fucking genius.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like that guy was a piece of shit, but he was less evil than you thought he was, but he was still a piece of shit, right? It's like if you could slam your 7-month pregnant wife's head into a wall. You should be taken out in fucking Old Yellard in the backyard at this point, man. Like, and the whole opening sequence where they kind of like, it's very trippy at the beginning of this movie, right? Because like, James does this on purpose, and he kind of sells it as like this supernatural being at the beginning of the movie, right? Like, because he has Gabriel sitting on the couch, and then like the lights turn on, and Gabriel's there. And you think, it's a ghost or something. But you figure out later on it's because Gabriel is a fucking fast-ass motherfucker, man. Yeah. Gabriel does not fuck around. And when he gets a hold of the husband and twists his head around, it's like, yes!
Yeah, you kind of wonder, like, okay, is the killer that bad of a person? You know, because you don't realize like what exactly it is and anything else. So like as a viewer, you're kind of like questioning how you feel about this. Like, you know, you want this dude to die, but you don't know if the person that killed him is like a piece of shit too. So like it leaves you guessing the whole movie, and very few movies do that to me these days.
Yeah. Well, it's because like most movies with killers like this. Also, I was gonna say Gabriel's body count compares to that motherfucker killed like 50 or 60 people. Like, this is like Michael Myers levels through the whole fucking franchise about it. Like body counts like in this fucking movie, man.
Especially Gabriel, in the police station.
Yeah, Gabriel kills like 45, 50 people in the fucking. Kills like 10 people in the fucking female like cell. Like when he pops out, man. Oh,
that dude, and like Zoe Bell with the fucking mullet and her name's Scorpion in the police station. Like, dude, that movie's worth watching just for that.
Dude, and I found the meme of the chair throwing where they turned JR like doing like the commentary over it, but. My wife and I are sitting there, and we busted out laughing because when Gabriel picks up that chair, you just assume he's going to chuck it through the window and then leave. But Gabriel goes, nope, and chucks that fucking chair at the two cops and fucks them. You're like, what the fuck was that? But I fucking love it. Like, Gabriel's movement in this entire movie is it's so offsetting. And when you realize it's the fucking hand, like a person going backwards, you're like, oh shit. And it makes so much sense, right? But it's the movement is like disconcerting at first. Like when Kiko Shaw like is running after him after the third murder, you're like, how the fuck is this like person moving like this? Like, it doesn't feel real, right?
That and the actress that plays Gabriel, that plays Gabriel, like it's a male that does the voice, but I think her name like Marina something that did Gabriel. Like, God, dude, it's almost like it's very fast, but it's almost like there's like a form of elegance to it. Like it's very graceful in the way that Gabriel moves. That where like you don't quite know if like what you're watching is like something supernatural or if it's like a physical person. And I think that like that kind of confusion adds to the charm of the movie. Like even when it was over, I kind of didn't know what I had just seen. Like to where you want to watch it again and figure out like, you know, like if you like it or not. Like I love the movie, but like it's interesting like that.
You sit there and when you're watching it again, you're watching the movement and you see the elbows and you see like the things that you wouldn't notice if you didn't notice it's a person going backwards. Like, and it's so the fucking movement and I said to you before, like the fucking police station where Gabriel's just fucking killing cops is like Matrix level of like movement, kind of like it's crazy how he's moving and just fucking slaughtering motherfuckers. The one thing I was curious, I don't know if you thought about this at all, like I don't like the knife Gabriel uses to kill everyone is like the top of a trophy, and it's like there's no hilt, like grabs like the knife like you know how they tell women to like hold keys, and it's kind of like that, and I'm like, how easy would it be to actually fucking hold that to like fuck shit up like that? That was the one thing I was like, I don't know how easy it would be to be actually stabbing into people with that, but
I wonder if that was intentional too. Yeah. Like, because, you know, usually victims of abuse, especially females, they do hold keys like that. And that could have been a clue to who the actual body of the host of Gabriel would be. Yeah. The way that's held, almost like the keys, like you're saying.
Yeah. It was a very, like, unique detail that, like, especially the second time, you're like, oh, because, again, there's so much in this. Like, it was funny, like, the first time I watched this, I got confused when the Gabriel kidnapped the mom because I'm like, they actually found an actress that looks like Annabelle Wallace is the main character, Madison. The woman they got to like play, I think her name is, where is it? I see it in here. It's like Jane Doe. It's Jean Louise Kelly. Looks like her mom. Yeah. And so I was like, why? How did they get her? And I was actually confused for a little bit, and then like. That was another thing. I wonder if people got confused with that because that's such good casting that you go, why is she working underground in this like sightseeing tour, and why is this happening? And it's like, damn, man.
For the first, I think 20 seconds, I thought that was the main character, and I was so confused for a second, and I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now.
Yeah, it took a second for me too, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, but. It's just fucking good casting because they got this woman that looks like her mother. And man, I have to say the kind of reveal scene in the fucking women's cell is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, it's great.
Where they fucking with her and Gabriel pops out and it's just like all these people that were just like bullies are like
just slaughtered.
They like and you're just like fuck. Also, that scene makes me laugh because of the like when she sits down and there's like the Asian lady like peeing and the like the scene is just like how she gets up. She's like, like she gets up all weird because it's pissing in the fucking giant prison cell. Oh man. And this scene, like the movie is brutal, man. For like a lot of the scenes, like the when she beats that first therapist to death with that trophy, it is like chunks of blood flying everywhere.
That and like the caved in faces.
Yeah.
Oh god, that reminded me of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. When he stomps that dude.
Yeah, he stomps him and then hangs him up.
Jesus.
Oh man. Tyler Mane was a fucking badass motherfucker in that movie.
He gets so much shit. He gets so much shit for being in those movies, but dude, like even though I'm not a fan of the first Rob Zombie's Halloween whatsoever, Tyler Mane did what he could for that role.
Yeah.
Like he was a force of nature.
Well, dude, it's funny because like you compare Michael Myers to like Jason, right? Like there's not consistency in any of those movies with actors, right? They never had the same Michael Myers twice, right? And it's
George Wilbur played him in 4 and 6. That was the only time. But even between those movies, even between 4 and 6, his shape changed dramatically. Even the actor, you know, he's kind of thinner in the 4th one, and the 6th one looks like Michael Myers, like after that pandemic weight, you know?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, you don't have like what, like Kane Hodder playing him for 3 movies in a row,
Yeah,
kind of stuff, like,
totally.
right? It's like that consistency. Michael, that's why it's when, like, watching Halloween 4 last night with my wife, I'm like, man, the one of the only things I don't like about that movie is the mask being like, it looks, there's something a little odd looking about the mask. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if it's the hairline. I don't know if it's too white. Like, I don't
There's
know
no features
what.
in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And
I
it
do
just
like that
it
about
makes
the
it.
new ones though. Like 2018,
Yeah.
Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends is gonna have
Yeah.
the same Michael
Yeah.
Myers. So it'll be like what the first
Yeah.
movie where someone's actively played Myers for like 3 movies straight.
Yeah. And yeah, it's one of the better things of it. But man, I I think that they did a the another thing about Malignant that it makes me laugh when her sister goes to the fucking asylum and parks way too fucking close to the fucking cliff. I'm like, why are you so goddamn close to this cliff, woman? Fucking giving me a panic attack.
Yeah,
Like, she gets
yeah.
like right to the edge. I'm like, this is a giant fucking parking spot, lady. You fucking, that building is huge. That's another scene, man. James Wan fucks with you. Like, he makes you think that like something's gonna happen to the sister, and like they chuck noises in the background to make you
Yeah.
think that too. And man, fucking like those abandoned asylums are kind of like, a go-to horror spot. Have you ever seen? I assume you have a Subject. What is it? Subject 7 or
Session
the
9?
one with the hat or yeah, 9. Yeah,
Yeah, Session Nine's
with
great.
with all the CSI Miami
Yeah,
guys,
yeah,
and
yeah. That movie is so unsettling.
yeah, it really was. What kind of stuff, like, it was just spoiler stuff, like what is the kind of stuff that, like, spoiler wise, you would like to talk about with this, because it's just there's a lot to go over, and we've already been going through ours. But yeah,
Honestly, I can't really think anything off the top of my head. Like we've kind of covered it. Like all the reveal stuff, the kills, the music, everything. Like I just appreciate the hell out of the movie in general. Like
yeah,
it swings for the fences, Like it
yeah,
makes bold steps, and I get that some of them don't work for people, or all of them don't work for some people. But I think that, like, even if the movie doesn't work for someone, I think as horror fans, like
yeah,
you always hear people complaining, like, oh, here's another remake, here's another this, here's another
yeah,
sequel. Well, you know what? This is a fucking original movie that goes for broke. It's an original
yeah,
movie that's like fucking balls out. Let's everything
yeah,
and the kitchen sink. And we don't get that very often. And even if it's not for someone, I think that these are the movies that we should champion and really
yeah,
push to support. And I'm not saying like
yeah,
pay money for every movie that comes out just because it's a horror movie. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But the fact is, if we don't support big movies like this that go for broke and do something different, we're gonna get the same fucking sequels and the same remakes every other year.
yeah. Like, I mean, dude, it's funny, man, because we're like, they just what recently just popped up. They're doing a Lost Boys remake, right?
Yeah.
And like, we're at a thing where we've had, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and all the things have gotten remade. Like, we had a Child's Play remake, which I still think that movie doesn't get enough credit for trying to do something kind of different. I don't know how successful it was. I enjoyed the movie, but like, doesn't compare to the original in my book. But
Hmm.
like, there's so much in, like, dude, that's like one of the things I love about, like, it frustrates me about horror, especially you go into foreign horror. Like, one of my favorite movies ever is Let the Right One In,
Oh, it's great.
and had to do an American version because they can't people can't read subtitles, and that movie, the Let Me In was the remake, and it was done with love, but it wasn't necessary. And it's the same
Yeah.
thing as like
Well, that's what
the
I'm
Old
wondering
Boy
about.
remake.
That's what I'm wondering about James Wan producing the American remake of Train to Busan next.
Yeah.
You know,
Why that movie's a fucking
it's
dude. If
perfect, but I am
Yeah,
glad that he chose someone that I think would do a great
yeah,
job, because Timo, that's directing the American remake, or whatever.
yeah,
Like, his segment in the second VHS movie is my favorite segment of any of the VHS movies. He did Safe Haven. The kind of culty
Was
one.
that the cult?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the guy who did The Raid and stuff, right? So like that's the same director.
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it?
I think they both worked on that one. Yeah, together. Yeah. I think, dude. I personally, I'd rather these movies not have to get remade. But like even with the Lost Boys, like people are so just venomously against it, and it's just like I tell
Give
people
it a chance.
that, and I tell people the same thing about when they talk shit about the new Halloween movies. It's like, okay, would you rather have Michael Myers be summed up as a long-haired Kiss fan that kills his sister because she wouldn't take him trick-or-treating? Or would you rather have him be led by a senior citizen cult? Or, you know, would you like rather have him have a mute niece that has a psychic connection? Like, what the fuck are you wanting at this point? The Lost Boys, like, people are pissed about a remake. A remake doesn't take away from the fact that the original exists. And did they forget the second and third absolute pieces of shit sequels to the first movie?
Yeah.
Like, they killed off Corey Haim's character. Like, they were fucking bullshit. Like, worst, like, best case, we get a remake that's a new take on a really great movie that we love, and we get two good movies. Worst case, it's a piece of shit, and we still have the original movie to watch.
Yeah, exactly. That's I watch a YouTuber who said that it was his point. Like, you can't, like, that's like if it sucks, then like you don't ever have to watch it again, and if it doesn't, then like you have a companion piece to go along with it. And it's like I'm never gonna watch the Thing prequel remake again, but like that doesn't mean like I still have the John Carpenter original, like, right? And for every shitty Alien movie that happened with like that after Aliens, like it doesn't mean that like I can't enjoy Aliens and Alien because they're still there, and it doesn't make I could complain about them because it's funny to complain about them sometimes, but like you still appreciate the original, and that's all that matters. And it's like
then
I will
like
forever go back.
The Alien or the Thing prequel, like I'm not a fan of it whatsoever, but dude, experiencing that movie didn't take away from my love for that original whatsoever. Like I still own every fucking format of that movie. I just watched the 4K 2 days ago, and goddamn, that movie's never looked better. Like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't take away from these movies we love. And Malignant doesn't take away from how great other people enjoyed the previous James Wan movies.
Well, dude, it's we sitting there and like so of the last 10 years of horror movies that I've really, really loved. I've loved things like Mandy and like even things like Color Out of Space, which is wonky, but it's a fucking cool movie just because of what it is. Psycho Gorman, all these things that have come out in the last couple of years that are really cool. Nobody ever fucking watches them. Like, so you're like you talk about remakes and all this stuff. It's like, it's just us fucking crazy people that like watch everything horror wise that like, or try, not everything because you can never watch everything, but like we watch a lot of horror shit, and it's like, just appreciate it, man. It's coming from a big budget studio. And like
that, and like somebody commented on Facebook about The Lost Boys, and they were like, well, I just wish we'd stop getting remakes. And I told them straight up, I was like, okay, but this is why we get remakes. Because when we get independent horror, nobody fucking shows up to watch them. Yeah, you know, and I'm not talking trash about the MCU movies, but 9 out of 10 people are going to go to the theater to watch those movies because that's what they like. Yep. They'd rather support the movies that, okay, they know they like the MCU movies, so let's fucking watch them. But a lot of indie horror films, they don't get watched, so studios don't take the gambles to make them. And they're going to say, okay, what's an IP? What's a franchise that we know will get asses in seats? Let's remake it. The only way to stop remakes is to fucking support the independent films.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think, like you talked about earlier, like I've never even seen it, like why do you think they keep making Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies that none of them are pretty, very critically acclaimed, right? Like,
no,
like
dude,
ever since,
like,
and you know what's funny? My first Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the Michael Bay film. It was like literally the first one I ever saw. But guess what? Like you know why they keep making them? Because they keep making profit, right? And so like you have these things where if you support things like Malignant, and you support things that like shit, man, things like Willy's Wonderland or like, and dude, I still think Host is one of the fucking best horror movies over the last decade, and it was like 50-something minutes long and shot over Zoom. Like it's the stuff that needs to be like, give it credit and go, like you're talking about, dude, there have been so many cool little horror movies on Shudder that Shudder is curated that I'm like, man, these are fucking cool little movies. I don't like.
I was gonna say that I get a lot of shit. People seem to think that I love every movie because the times that I'm ever quoted on like a Blu-ray or a poster, they usually pick the most like flamboyantly big one. I'm on the cover of the Host Blu-ray. That's my quote at the beginning, the Dread Central one, saying it's the best horror film of the last 10 years. Not because of that, but because I genuinely thought that. Like Host scared the first time I watched it. Host scared me in a way that I hadn't been scared since Blair Witch in the theater.
Yeah.
I watched Blair Witch in the theater, and I didn't watch that movie for 15 years after that.
Yeah. Dude, that movie, I had the VHS after it, because I was like, so you had to have been about 18 when that came out. Yeah, right? Because I was 16. Out, and that movie fucking terrified me, because I don't know, man. I feel like you and I, be like I can watch. Not much scares me when it comes to movies. Like, jump scares will make me jump. Like, I played some weird independent horror games on my stream a couple Saturdays ago, and like the jump scares, I jump like a fucking baby when it comes to jump scare stuff. But like, that's not like scare, like, right? It's a well done jump scare. Yeah. It shocks you. Like Blair Witch and fucking Paranormal, both because of how they do that and how they make you. You don't know what it is, what you're scared with your mind. That's what it is, and the Host does the exact same thing. Or Host, I keep saying the Host, but which is the South Korean film with the Jaws like thing. Have you seen the Host?
I love it. Yeah.
It's we talked about that here recently, and it was a good time. That movie is such a fucking blast, and it's older, and the CGI isn't great in it, but it still holds up, and that movie is fucking a blast. That's one of the things that we've laughed about on this podcast, because Josh and I have had the thing where at one point there was another movie called Spiral like 2 years ago that like Josh and I, one of them was on Shudder, and Josh watched another Spiral that was a different, like, so a lot of these lower budget indie horror movies have these names that are just kind of generic, and you're like, oh, okay. And we actually didn't even talk about that movie because he got confused with what we were talking about. We talked about something else. That's and great. It was like, it's just because of these little movies don't have like, and they don't have marketing campaigns and all that shit, right? And it's so. But
hey,
man,
dude, really quickly, my headphones are dying. Like. Okay, I charged them right before the show too, which is crazy.
Dude, okay, let's just wrap up then. We've been going 2 hours and 11 minutes anyways, dude, and I would love to have you on again. Anyways,
anytime, man, for real.
Yeah, just plug your shit, and I'm going to put links to your Twitter and stuff in the bio for the bottom of this episode, but...
sure. If people want to get a hold of me, I'm usually on Twitter. It's at Jerry is just okay. I write for... up until recently, I wrote for Dread Central, so I mean, maybe not visit there. Just kidding. But I write for Scream Magazine, Council of Zoom, Wicked Horror, the Film Scorer. I write about film scores over there for them. I'm all over the place. I do music for movies, but I also make instrumental music, kind of like just really ominous mood music under Rainy Days for Ghosts over on Bandcamp. That I'm working on. I'm working on a
you have
book.
an LP coming out. Right?
On Halloween Day. It's kind of like it. See, I haven't said this is what it is because I don't want people to get hyped up and say it's a piece of shit. It's basically an EP if I scored Halloween.
Dude, that fucking.
This is the first time I've admitted that. But I basically watched Halloween without sound and just made music over a lot of it. And that's what the EP is, but I'm not telling people that's what that is.
Yeah, dude, it's okay. Not many people are gonna listen to this, and so you're fine. You're fine.
There's gonna be like one dude that's like, "Fuck this guy." No, but like that. I'm working on a book that comes out next year. I'm all over the place, but I always love talking to people on Twitter. I'm super approachable. I fucking hate motherfuckers that don't respond to people. I try to talk to every single person that wants to talk about movies. Dude, I'd love to be on the show again. I had so much fucking fun. So
dude, it was a blast, dude. And I don't know how long Josh is out, so maybe reach out to you again. Right. So, so everybody else, let me wrap up. Murdermoose.com, we're Murder Moose Pod on Twitter, and I'm Rod_Johnson on Twitter. So come follow me. And all those links will be in the show. They always are. But thank you so much, Jerry. I don't know what the fuck we're doing, but this is fucking 52. We've done this for a year, so fuck yeah. So everybody, thank you for listening. Have a good time. And I'll talk to you guys later. And